Hey there. Welcome to another quiet corner of history, where the past feels like a half-remembered dream. Tonight, we're not chasing kings or battles or the kind of stories that get carved into stone. Instead, we're wandering into the shadows of everyday life, to jobs that once kept the world turning, but have since faded into the fog of time. These are the forgotten trades, work so ordinary it was barely noticed, yet so vital that entire communities leaned on it. Jobs like the knocker-up, the leech collector, the fuller, the sin-eater, people who woke cities, healed the sick, shaped cloth, or carried burdens heavier than you'd believe. No statues were built for them, no songs sung, but their lives were the heartbeat of a world that's gone. If this kind of slow, whispered history helps you drift off, maybe give the video a like or subscribe, but only if it feels right. And drop a comment. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. There's something oddly comforting about knowing who's out there, settling into the same soft story under the same wide sky. So dim the lights, pull up a blanket, let the hum of a fan or the crackle of a fire settle your mind. We're stepping back, not to a grand stage, but to the edges of the past. Let's begin. Picture a city morning sometime in the 1800s, before alarm clocks were cheap or even common. The air is thick with coal smoke, the streets still dark, the stars just starting to fade. Most people are asleep, curled under thin blankets in cold rooms. But one person is awake, moving through the alleys with a long stick and a purpose. This is the knocker-up. Their job is to wake the world. They tap on windows, rattle shutters, sometimes call out names in a low, practiced voice. They carry a lantern, maybe a pocket watch if they're lucky, and they know the rhythm of the city better than anyone. Factory workers, bakers, dockhands, they all depend on this solitary figure to start their day. The knocker-up doesn't sleep in. They can't. Their work begins when the world is still dreaming. It's not a glamorous job. The pay is meager, scraped together from pennies offered by workers who can barely afford it. The hours are brutal, out in the frost before dawn, trudging through rain or snow, dodging stray dogs and drunken stragglers. Some knocker-ups use a pea shooter, firing dried peas at second-story windows to save their voices. Others rely on their stick, worn smooth from years of tapping. They know which windows belong to heavy sleepers, which households are late payers. They memorize routes through tangled streets, timing their rounds so the baker's oven is hot by 5 and the factory whistle doesn't catch anyone still in bed. Mistakes aren't forgiven. Miss a window and someone misses a shift. Miss a shift and a family goes hungry. You might wonder who wakes the knocker-up. Sometimes nobody does. They train themselves to rise in the dark, their bodies tuned to the silent clock of the city. Other times, they rely on a neighbor or a spouse, someone who knows the weight of their work. In big cities like London or Manchester, entire families take up the trade, passing the stick from one generation to the next. A widow might do it to keep her children fed, tapping windows until her hands ache. A retired factory worker might take it up, too old for the looms but still needing coin. It's a job for the desperate, the determined, or those who don't mind the cold. The knocker-up's world is one of rhythm and repetition. They move like a metronome, street by street, tap by tap. They hear the city waking, shutters creaking, boots hitting floors, the first curses of the day. They see things others miss. A light left burning in a sick room, a door left ajar, a cat slipping through a broken fence. They're invisible in a way. Nobody invites them in for tea. Nobody writes their name down. But without them, the city stumbles. Factories stall. Bread goes unbaked. Ships sit unloaded. Their work is a thread in the fabric of the day, so small you barely notice it until it's gone. By the early 20th century, the knocker-up starts to fade. Alarm clocks get cheaper. Electricity spreads, bringing light to mornings. Factories install time clocks, and workers learn to rise on their own. The knocker-up's stick goes quiet, their lantern unlit. By the 1950s, they're a memory, a story told by grandparents who remember the tap on the window. The job vanishes not because it wasn't needed, but because the world changed faster than the people in it. The knocker-up doesn't leave a legacy, not in the way we think of it. No museums hold their tools. No holidays mark their work. But every morning, when you wake to a buzzing phone or a beeping clock, you're living in the echo of their quiet, stubborn labor. Now, let's shift to a different world, one wetter and stranger. It's the 1700s, maybe earlier, and you're standing ankle-deep in a sluggish river somewhere in England or France. The water is cold, the air heavy with the smell of mud and decay. You're a leech collector, and your job is to gather the slimy, wriggling creatures that doctors swear will save lives. Medicine in this time is a mix of guesswork and tradition, and leeches are a star player. They're used for everything: fevers, headaches, swelling, even bad moods. A doctor might order dozens for a single patient, believing the leech's bite will balance the body's humors, drawing out bad blood and restoring health. It's your job to keep those doctors supplied. Leech collecting is not for the faint-hearted. You wade into shallow waters, skirts hitched or trousers rolled, and you wait. Sometimes you use bait, an old horse leg or a piece of liver, tossed into the water to draw the leeches out. Other times you use your own legs, standing still as the creatures latch onto your skin. You feel the pinch, the slow tug as they settle in. You don't flinch. Flinching doesn't pay. When you've got enough, you peel them off, careful not to crush them, and drop them into a jar or a damp sack. A good day might mean 100 leeches, enough to sell to an apothecary for a few coins. A bad day means cold feet, empty hands, and a long walk home. The work is dangerous in ways you don't always see coming. The water hides more than leeches. Sharp rocks, sudden currents, infections that creep into cuts. You're out in all weather, rain soaking your clothes, sun burning your neck. Some collectors, mostly women, work in pairs, sharing the load and watching for trouble. Others go alone, preferring the silence. Either way, you learn the rivers like a map in your head, where the leeches gather, where the water's too deep, where the eels lurk. You learn to ignore the stares of villagers who think you're half mad, wading through muck for creatures they'd rather avoid. Leech collectors are poor, often desperately so. This isn't a job you choose for love. It's a job you take because the alternatives, starvation, begging, are worse. Many are widows or single mothers, scraping by in a world that offers them little. The money is never enough, but it's something. A jar of leeches might buy bread, a bit of coal, a pair of shoes for a child. You sell to middlemen who sell to apothecaries who sell to doctors, each taking a cut until your work is worth pennies. Still, you keep going. The leeches don't stop biting, and the doctors don't stop asking. By the 19th century, leeches are overharvested. Rivers run low on them and demand outstrips supply. Some collectors turn to importing leeches from farther afield, but it's not the same. Medical science shifts too. Germ theory starts to replace humors, and doctors question whether leeches do much at all. By the early 20th century, the leech collector's job is nearly gone, replaced by pharmacies and new kinds of medicine. The rivers grow quiet, the jars empty. The people who spent their lives in the water are forgotten, their work reduced to a footnote in medical history. But for centuries, they were the ones who kept the doctor's tables stocked, who stood in the cold and let the river take its toll, all for a chance to live another day. Let's step into a different corner of the past now, where the air smells of wet wool and the sound of pounding fills the day. It's the Middle Ages, somewhere in Europe, a town big enough to have a market but small enough that everyone knows your name. You're a fuller, and your job is to turn rough, greasy wool into cloth that's soft enough to wear. This isn't weaving or spinning, though those jobs matter too. Fulling is the gritty, sweaty step that comes after, the one that makes the fabric strong and tight. Without you, the wool stays loose and oily, useless for the cloaks and tunics that keep the world warm. Your work is essential, but it's not the kind anyone dreams of doing. Fulling is hard, messy labor. You start with raw woolen cloth, fresh from the loom, stiff with lanolin and bits of dirt. Your job is to clean it, shrink it, and felt it into something durable. In the early days, this means stomping the cloth in a tub of water mixed with fuller's earth, a clay that cuts through grease. You stand in the tub, bare feet sinking into the cold, slimy mix, and you tread for hours. The cloth squelches under your weight, the water turning murky as the wool releases its filth. Your legs ache, your back screams, but you keep going. A good fuller knows the rhythm. Steady, relentless, like a heartbeat. Stop too soon and the cloth won't hold its shape. Tread too long and you ruin it. Some towns have fulling mills, powered by water wheels that pound the cloth with wooden hammers. If you're lucky, you work at one, feeding the cloth into the mill and pulling it out when it's done. But mills are expensive, and many fullers still rely on their feet. Either way, the work is wet and cold. Your hands are red and cracked from handling soaked wool. Your clothes never quite dry. The smell, sour, earthy, faintly like urine, clings to you because urine is often part of the process. It's a powerful cleaner, breaking down grease in ways water alone can't. You collect it from households, sometimes paying a penny for a bucket. Nobody talks about it, but everybody knows. The fuller's world is one of noise and repetition. If you're in a mill, the hammers thump day and night, a sound that seeps into your dreams. If you're treading, it's the slosh of water and the creak of the tub. You work in a shed or a yard near a stream, where the water's clean enough to rinse the cloth. Your neighbors complain about the smell, the noise, but they still buy your cloth. You sell to weavers, tailors, merchants who ship it to distant markets. A good piece of fulled cloth can fetch a decent price, but you see little of it. The merchant takes the profit, the lord takes his tax, and you're left with enough to buy bread and maybe a new pair of boots when the old ones rot. Fullers are often men, but women do the work too, especially widows or those with no other trade. It's a job that doesn't care about your strength as much as your stamina. You learn to spot good wool by touch, to know when the cloth has shrunk enough, to judge the water's temperature by the sting on your skin. You learn to ignore the jokes about the smell, the whispers that fullers are unclean. You take pride in the cloth you produce, even if nobody thanks you for it. A well-fulled cloak can last a lifetime, and that's something. By the Industrial Revolution, fulling changes. Machines take over, faster and stronger than any human. Factories churn out cloth in volumes you could never match. The fuller's tub goes quiet. The mills fall silent or shift to other tasks. By the 19th century, the job is all but gone, swallowed by progress. The word fuller lingers in surnames. Fuller, Walker, Tucker. But the work itself fades. Nobody remembers the ache in your legs, the rhythm of your tread, the way you turned raw wool into something that warmed a stranger's back. But every time you wear a coat that holds its shape, you're touching the echo of the fuller's labor. Now, let's move to a stranger, heavier trade, one that carries a weight no coin can measure. It's the 1600s or 1700s, in a village tucked into the hills of England, Wales, or Scotland. The air is damp, the churchyard quiet, the community small and suspicious. You're a sin eater, and your job is to take on the sins of the dead. When someone dies, their family calls for you, not the priest. You come to the house, where the body lies still, surrounded by candles and grief. A piece of bread or a bowl of ale is placed on the corpse's chest. You eat the bread, drink the ale, and with each bite, you absorb the dead person's sins, freeing their soul for heaven. In return, you're paid a few coins, maybe a loaf to take home. Then you leave, carrying a burden nobody else dares touch. Sin eating is a job born of fear and faith. People believe that unconfessed sins trap a soul in purgatory or worse. The priest can't always absolve everything, especially if death came suddenly. That's where you come in. You're not holy, not trained, not even respected. You're a necessity, like a gravedigger or a butcher. Often you're an outcast, poor, old, alone. Maybe you're a widower with no trade, or a woman shunned for some long-forgotten scandal. The village tolerates you, but they don't invite you to feasts. You live on the edge, both of the community and of something larger, something nobody talks about in daylight. The work is quiet but heavy. You don't speak much when you arrive. The family watches, half grateful, half afraid. You say a prayer, maybe, or a few words passed down from whoever taught you the trade. The bread is stale, the ale bitter, but you don't complain. Each job adds to the weight you carry. Not just the sins, but the stares, the whispers, the way doors close when you pass. Some say you're cursed, that the sins you eat cling to your soul. Others say you're a saint, sacrificing yourself for strangers. You don't know what to believe. You just know the coins keep you fed, and the work keeps you needed. Sin eaters don't leave records. Nobody writes down their names or counts their deeds. The job exists in stories, in folklore, in the memories of villages that clung to old ways. By the 19th century, it's fading. The church grows stricter, calling sin-eating superstition. New ideas about death and salvation spread, and people turn to priests instead. The sin eater's bowl goes empty, their role forgotten. But for centuries, they were there, sitting by the dead, eating bread in the flickering light, carrying what others couldn't bear. Their work was a kind of mercy, even if it came at a cost nobody could name. Let's wander now to a different time and place, where the streets are narrow and the air hums with the clatter of hooves and wheels. It's the 17th or 18th century, in a bustling city like Paris or London, where the roads are more mud than stone, and the night is darker than you can imagine. You're a link boy, a child or young man with a torch in hand, lighting the way for strangers through the city's maze. Your job is to guide people home, or to taverns, theaters, or less savory places, when the sun goes down and the streets turn treacherous. Your flame is a small rebellion against the dark, but it comes with risks nobody talks about. As a link boy, you carry a torch made of pitch and tow, or sometimes a simple candle if that's all you can afford. The flame sputters, spitting sparks that sting your hands and singe your clothes. You walk ahead of your client, holding the light high, picking out the safest path through puddles, broken cobbles, and piles of refuse. The city at night is a different beast, silent in places, rowdy in others, always unpredictable. You know the shortcuts, the alleys to avoid, the corners where thieves wait. Your clients, merchants, gentlemen, or late-night revelers, trust you to keep them safe, but they rarely look you in the eye. To them, you're a tool, not a person. The work is unsteady. You stand at street corners, calling out or waiting for a nod from someone stepping out of a tavern. On a good night, you guide half a dozen people, earning a few pennies or a scrap of food. On a bad night, you stand in the cold, your torch burning low, your stomach as empty as the streets. The pay depends on the client's mood. Some toss you a coin, others promise to pay later and never do. You're young, often no older than 12, and the city doesn't care if you're tired or scared. You learn to hide both. Danger is part of the job. The torch makes you a target, a beacon for anyone looking for trouble. Thieves might follow, waiting for your client to stumble. Drunks might take a swing, mistaking you for someone else. And then there's the fire itself. Pitch torches are hard to control, and a gust of wind can send flames licking at your sleeve. Some link boys lose fingers or worse. Others fall into scams, lured by clients who promise big tips but lead them into traps. You learn to trust your instincts, to watch for shifty eyes or too friendly smiles. You learn the city's pulse, its safe hours and its cruel ones. Link boys are often orphans or children from families too poor to keep them. The job is a step above begging, but not by much. You might share a room with other boys, sleeping on straw, pooling your coins for bread or ale. You dream of something better, a trade, a shop, but the streets don't let go easily. Some link boys grow up to be coachmen or laborers. Others don't grow up at all, lost to illness, fights, or the cold. The city moves on, and nobody counts the torches that go out. By the 19th century, link boys start to vanish. Gas lamps spread, lighting streets without the need for a boy and his flame. Wealthier homes get their own lanterns, and police patrols make the night less wild. The job lingers in poorer districts for a while, but by the early 20th century, it's gone. The link boy's torch is a memory, replaced by electric bulbs and paved roads. But for centuries, they were the ones who pushed back the dark, guiding strangers through a world that could swallow them whole. Every time you walk a lit street at night, you're walking in the glow of their forgotten work. Now, let's shift to a quieter, stranger trade, one tied to the earth itself. It's the 1500s or 1600s, in a rural corner of England or Germany, where fields stretch wide and the air smells of damp soil and hay. You're a water diviner, a dowser, and your job is to find water where nobody else can. Farmers, villagers, even lords call on you when a well runs dry or a new field needs a spring. You walk the land with a forked stick, hazel or willow, cut fresh, and you wait for it to tremble, to pull, to point you to water hidden deep below. It's not science, not exactly, but it's not guesswork either. It's something older, something you feel in your bones. Dowsing is a solitary craft. You wander fields alone, stick in hand, eyes on the ground. The stick is your tool, but your real skill is listening to the land, to the air, to something you can't name. When the stick twitches, you stop, mark the spot, and tell the farmer to dig. Sometimes they find water clear and cold, exactly where you said. Other times, they dig and find nothing but dirt. You don't always get paid for failure, but success brings coin, a meal, maybe a bed for the night. People call you gifted or cursed, depending on their mood and the depth of their well. The work takes you far from home. You travel from village to village, following rumors of dry wells or new settlements. You sleep in barns or under hedges, your cloak your only blanket. You learn the land's secrets, where the soil shifts, where the grass grows greener, where the air feels heavy with hidden springs. You learn to read people, too. The desperate farmer who can't pay but begs you to try, the skeptic who watches with folded arms, the child who trails you, asking if you're a witch. You smile, say little, and keep walking. Dowsers are often outsiders, not by choice but by necessity. The job doesn't tie you to one place, and that makes you strange in a world where most people never leave their village. Some see you as a savior, others as a fraud. The church doesn't always approve, muttering about pagan ways, but they don't stop you either. Water is too important, and not every priest can pray a well into being. You don't argue with the doubters. You just point to the ground and let the water speak for itself. By the 19th century, dowsing starts to fade as a profession. Science brings new ways to find water, geology, drilling machines, maps of aquifers. Dowsers become relics, their sticks seen as superstition. The job lingers in rural places, but it's no longer a living. By the 20th century, it's mostly folklore, a story told by old men in pubs. But for centuries, dowsers were the ones who found life in the earth, who walked the fields with nothing but a stick and a hunch, who gave villages a reason to dig. Their work was a kind of magic, even if they'd never call it that. And every glass of water from a village well carries a trace of their quiet art. Let's drift now to a world of fire and shadow, where the night is long and the air tastes of soot. It's the 18th century, deep in the heart of a European city, maybe Amsterdam or Edinburgh, where stone buildings crowd together and chimneys pierce the sky. You're a chimney sweep, and your job is to climb into the dark, narrow flues that keep the city warm. Without you, fires go out, smoke fills homes, and winter becomes a crueler enemy. But your work is grimy, dangerous, and done in places most people would rather forget. You're small, often a child, because only the smallest bodies can fit where the soot collects thickest. As a chimney sweep, your day begins before dawn. You carry a bundle of brushes, rods, and a scraper, tools worn smooth by years of use. Your master, if you're an apprentice, and most sweeps are, leads you to a grand house or a merchant's shop. The flue is your workplace, a tight, twisting tunnel of brick, coated in black dust that clings to your skin and lungs. You strip to your underclothes, wrap a cloth around your face, and climb. Sometimes you use a rope to pull yourself up. Other times, you brace your back against one wall and your feet against another, inching upward with nothing but muscle and nerve. The darkness is total, the air choking. Soot falls in your eyes, your mouth, your nose. You keep moving. The job is to clean the flue, scraping away the creosote and ash that build up from countless fires. A block chimney can spark a blaze or smother a household in smoke, so your work matters. You push your brush ahead, feeling for turns and blockages. Sometimes you find a bird's nest or a dead rat. Sometimes the flue narrows so much you can barely breathe. Your knees and elbows bleed, scraped raw against the brick. If you get stuck, and it happens, panic is your enemy. You learn to stay calm, to twist your body just right, to call for help in a voice that doesn't shake. Your master might pull you out or he might not. Some boys don't come back down. Sweeps are young, often orphans or children sold into the trade by families too poor to keep them. Boys as young as 4 or 5 are common. their small frames perfect for the narrowest flues. Girls work too, though less often. The pay is nothing: food, a place to sleep, maybe a coin if your master is kind. Kindness is rare. Masters work you hard, knowing you're replaceable. The soot marks you as different, a walking shadow in a city of clean faces. People step aside when you pass, not out of respect, but because you're dirty. You learn to live with the stares, the whispers, the jokes about sweep's luck. The dangers go beyond tight spaces. Soot is poison, slow and silent, coats your lungs, bringing coughs that don't fade. Some sweeps die young, their breath stolen by the very air they work in. Fires are another risk. Hot flues can burn, and a careless spark can trap you in a chimney-turned inferno. Falls happen too, bones breaking on hearths below. And then there's the cold. You work in winter. When chimneys are busiest, your fingers numb as you climb. You dream of warmth, but you rarely feel it. By the 19th century, the sweep's life begins to change. Reformers notice the children, their blackened faces and hollow eyes. Laws ban young sweeps, though enforcement is spotty. Machines, long brushes, and vacuums start to replace human climbers. By the early 20th century, the child sweep is mostly gone, their work taken by adults or technology. The job lingers in stories, in images of soot-stained boys on rooftops, but the reality fades. Chimney sweeps were the unseen keepers of warmth, crawling through the dark so others could sit by a fire. Every clean hearth was their victory, paid for in scrapes and coughs and years they'd never see. Now, let's step into a softer, stranger trade, one tied to ritual and loss. It's the 1600s, in a small town in Italy or Spain, where faith and death walk hand in hand. You're a professional mourner, a woman hired to weep at funerals. When someone dies, their family calls you to the house or the church, where you wail, tear your hair, and sing laments that echo through the streets. Your tears are not your own. They belong to the dead, to the family, to the community that needs grief to feel real. You're paid in coin or food, but your true wage is the weight of sorrow you carry for strangers. Mourning is a performance, but it's not false. You know how to cry on cue, to let your voice break just right, to fall to your knees with a sob that draws eyes. But the grief you show often feels real, pulled from your own losses or the endless funerals you attend. You wear black, your face veiled, your hands clutching a rosary or a handkerchief. You lead the procession, your voice rising above the crowd, singing of loss and heaven and the fragility of life. The family follows, comforted by your sorrow, relieved to have their pain made public. Without you, the funeral feels incomplete, the dead unmoored. The job is women's work, rooted in tradition. Men might pray or dig graves, but women are the keepers of tears. You're often older, a widow or a spinster, someone who knows loss intimately. You work in groups, 3 or 4 mourners together, your voices blending into a chorus of grief. You know the songs by heart, passed down from mothers or aunts. You know which families want loud wails, which prefer quiet sobs. You learn to read the room, to stretch the lament or cut it short. You're part actor, part priestess, part confidant. The work is draining. Funerals come often. Disease, childbirth, accidents, and each one asks for your heart. You cry for people you never met, for children, for old men, for strangers whose names you learn only as you weep. The pay is small, enough for bread or a bit of wine. Some families are generous, offering a meal or a shawl. Others pay late or not at all, especially if they think your tears weren't loud enough. You don't argue. You move to the next funeral, the next town, the next grave. By the 19th century, professional mourning begins to fade. The church pushes for simpler funerals, calling hired tears extravagant. New ideas about grief, private, personal, take hold. By the 20th century, the mourner's role is gone, replaced by silent funerals and stoic faces. But for centuries, these women were the voice of loss, their wails a bridge between the living and the dead. Every quiet cemetery holds the echo of their songs, sung for those who could no longer speak. Let's slip now into a world of clanging metal and glowing embers, where the air is thick with the smell of molten iron. It's the 1400s or 1500s, in a village nestled in the hills of Germany or England, where the forge is the heart of the community. You're a nailer, a maker of nails, and your job is to craft the small, sturdy pins that hold the world together. Houses, carts, ships, barrels. None of them stand without your work. Nails are everywhere, but nobody thinks about them until they're gone. Your hands are calloused, your back bent, and your days are filled with the rhythm of hammer and fire. It's a humble trade, but it's yours. As a nailer, you work in a small forge, often a shed behind your home. The fire roars, fed by charcoal or wood, and the anvil sits heavy in the center of the room. You start with iron rods, heated until they glow red. With tongs, you pull a rod from the fire, lay it on the anvil, and hammer it into shape. Each nail is made by hand, cut, tapered, pointed, and headed in a series of quick practice blows. A good nailer can make dozens in an hour, but it's grueling work. The heat is relentless, the hammer heavy. Sparks fly, burning tiny holes in your apron. Your arms ache, but you don't stop. A single bad nail can split a plank or ruin a wheel. The process is precise but not delicate. You learn to judge the iron's heat by its color, cherry red for shaping, white hot for mistakes. You learn the anvil's song, the way each strike rings true or sour. Most nails are simple, meant for rough work like building barns or fixing fences. Others are finer, for furniture or ships, with square heads or extra length. You make what the village needs, bartering nails for bread, cloth, or a jug of ale. Some nailers sell to merchants, who carry their work to distant towns. A sack of nails might build a bridge or hold a cathedral's roof, but you'll never see it. Your world is the forge, the fire, the next nail. Nailers are often men, but women and children help too. A wife might tend the fire or sort finished nails. A child might sweep the floor or fetch water to cool the iron. The forge is a family affair, passed down through generations. You learned from your father, who learned from his, each teaching the tricks of the trade. How to strike without wasting energy, how to spot flaws in the iron, how to keep the fire just right. The village knows you by the clang of your hammer, a sound as steady as the church bell. They don't thank you, but they need you. The work isn't safe. Burns are common, scars a badge of the trade. A misaimed hammer can crush a finger. The smoke and fumes wear on your lungs, and the heat saps your strength. You age fast, your hands gnarled by 30, your eyes squinting from years of staring into fire. But there's pride in it. A nail well made is a small victory, a thing that lasts when wood rots and stone crumbles. You know your work holds the village together, even if nobody says it. By the 19th century, nailers start to disappear. Factories churn out nails by the thousands, machine cut and cheaper than anything you could make. The forge goes cold, the anvil silent. By the early 20th century, handmade nails are a curiosity, used only by craftsmen or collectors. The nailer's trade is forgotten, their hammers rusting in attics. But every old barn, every creaking ship, every house still standing owes its strength to their work. Each nail driven into wood is a whisper of their fire, their sweat, their steady hands. Now, let's turn to a quieter, odder trade, one that lives in the flicker of candlelight. It's the 1700s in a small town in France or colonial America, where evenings are long and darkness is a daily guest. You're a tallow chandler, a maker of candles from animal fat. Your job is to light the night, to turn slaughterhouse scraps into something that pushes back the shadows. Candles are everywhere, homes, churches, taverns, and you're the one who keeps them burning. It's a smelly, sticky trade, but it's steady, and in a world without electricity, your work is a kind of magic. As a tallow chandler, you start with fat, usually beef or mutton, sometimes pig. It comes from butchers or farmers, delivered in greasy barrels that stink of blood and decay. You melt the fat in a great iron pot, stirring as it bubbles and spits. The smell is wretched, like burnt meat and sour milk, and it clings to your clothes, your hair, your dreams. Once the fat is liquid, you strain it to remove bits of gristle or bone. Then you pour it into molds, threading each with a wick of twisted cotton. The candles cool slowly, hardening into pale, waxy sticks that smell faintly of the animal they came from. The work is slow and messy. You burn yourself on the pot, cut your fingers on the molds. The fat stains everything. Your hands, your apron, the floor of your workshop. You learn to live with it, to ignore the neighbors' complaints about the smell drifting down the street. You make candles in batches, enough to sell at the market or deliver to a church. A good candle burns for hours, steady and bright. A bad one sputters, drips, or smells so bad it clears a room. You aim for the former, knowing your reputation depends on it. Chandlers are often men, but women take up the trade too, especially in smaller towns. You might work alone or with a partner, sharing the load of melting, pouring, and trimming. You sell to everyone: rich families who want long-burning candles for their dining rooms, poor households who can afford only a single stub. The church is your best customer, buying candles by the dozen for masses and vigils. You learn their preferences: thick candles for altars, thin ones for processions. You learn to smile when they haggle, to nod when they complain about the price. The job isn't dangerous, but it's hard. The heat of the pot, the weight of the barrels, the endless stirring, they wear you down. Winter is your busiest time, when nights are long and candles burn fast. You work late, your own candle flickering as you pour the last batch. There's satisfaction in it, though. A well-made candle is a small gift to the world, a way to make the dark less frightening. You know your work lights prayers, suppers, secrets whispered after midnight. By the 19th century, tallow chandlers fade. Paraffin and beeswax candles, made in factories, are cleaner and cheaper. Gas lamps spread, then electric lights, shrinking the need for candles altogether. By the 20th century, the chandler's pot is cold, their trade a memory. But for centuries, they were the ones who turned fat into flame, who gave light to a world that lived half in shadow. Every candle that burned through a winter night was their work, a quiet glow against the endless dark. Let's step now into a world of dust and hoofbeats, where the horizon stretches wide and the air smells of leather and sweat. It's the 19th century, somewhere in the American West or the Australian outback, where roads are scarce and the land is vast. You're a drover, a driver of cattle or sheep, and your job is to move herds across hundreds of miles to market or pasture. You live on horseback, under the stars, guiding animals through deserts, rivers, and plains. It's a life of freedom, but also hardship, where the line between survival and disaster is as thin as a blade of grass. As a drover, your days begin before dawn. You saddle your horse, check your gear, bedroll, canteen, a rifle for wolves or rustlers, and ride out to the herd. The animals, thousands strong, are a living tide, stubborn and unpredictable. Your job is to keep them moving, to point them toward a distant railhead or grazing ground. You ride alongside, whistling or shouting, using your horse to nudge stragglers back in line. Dust chokes your throat, the sun burns your neck, and the ground underfoot is never kind. Rocky one day, swampy the next. You sleep where you stop, on a blanket by a campfire, the lowing of cattle your lullaby. The work is a dance of patience and grit. Cattle spook easily. A clap of thunder, a snake, a shadow can send them stampeding. You learn to read their moods, to spot the lead steer who sets the pace. Sheep are different, slower, prone to wandering, but just as demanding. You work with a team, other drovers, a cook, maybe a dog or two. Each has a role, but trust is everything. A lazy hand or a bad call can lose the herd, and with it, months of wages. You're paid by the drive, a lump sum if you make it to market. Lose the herd, and you get nothing but blisters and stories. Drovers are a mixed men mostly, but women ride too, especially in family outfits. You're young or old, native-born or immigrant, sometimes a former soldier or runaway. The job draws those who can't stand walls, who'd rather face a storm than a factory whistle. You learn the land like a book, where the water holes are, where the grass grows thick, where the river runs shallow enough to cross. You learn to spot trouble, rustlers in the distance, a coyote's eyes at night, a storm cloud that promises flood. You carry scars from falls, horns, or fights, each one a lesson you didn't ask for. The dangers are real. Stampedes can crush you. Rivers can drown you. Rustlers don't ask questions, and neither do rattlesnakes. Sickness spreads fast on the trail. No doctor, no shelter, just a fever and a prayer. Loneliness gnaws too. Weeks pass without a town, a letter, a voice that isn't your own. You talk to your horse, sing to the herd, tell stories to the stars. The pay is decent when it comes, enough to buy a drink or a new saddle, but it's never steady. Some drovers save for a plot of land. Most spend it before the next drive begins. By the late 19th century, drovers start to fade. Railroads spread, carrying cattle faster than any horse. Barbed wire carves the open range into ranches. By the early 20th century, the long drives are gone, replaced by trains and trucks. The drover's campfire burns out, their trails grown over. But for decades, they were the ones who moved wealth on four legs, who turned wild herds into food and profit. Every steak on a city plate, every wool coat in a shop, carried the dust of their work. The open road remembers their hoofbeats, even if the world forgot their names. Now, let's shift to a softer, stranger trade, one tied to the rhythm of the tides. It's the 1600s or 1700s, along the rocky coast of Cornwall or Brittany, where the sea is both provider and thief. You're a wrecker, but not the kind who plunders ships. You're a salvager, a gatherer of what the ocean spits out. When storms drive ships onto rocks, you're there, combing the shore for cargo. Timber, rope, barrels of wine, anything the waves haven't claimed. Your job is to rescue what's lost, to turn disaster into survival. It's not noble, but it's necessary, and the sea doesn't care about your morals. Wrecking is a communal effort. When word spreads of a ship run aground, the village moves. Men, women, children, all racing to the shore. You wade into the surf, cold waves slapping your legs, and haul what you can. A broken crate might hold cloth or spices. A stray plank could build a fence. You work fast, before the tide turns or the Lord's men arrive to claim their share. The law says wrecks belong to the crown or the local lord, but the law is far away, and hunger is close. You hide what you find, stuffing small treasures under your cloak, burying barrels in the dunes. The work is dangerous. Jagged rocks cut your feet, waves pull at your balance. Some wreckers drown, caught by a rogue swell. Others are caught by soldiers, fined or whipped for stealing what the sea gave. You learn to watch the weather, to know when a storm might break a ship. You learn the coast secrets, coves where cargo washes up, cliffs where guards don't patrol. You learn to trust your neighbors, but not too much. A good find can spark fights, and a loose tongue can bring the law. Wreckers are poor, often fishermen or farmers who turn to the shore when crops fail or nets come up empty. You're not a pirate, though stories paint you that way. You don't lure ships to their doom, that's a myth, mostly. You just take what the sea offers, knowing tomorrow it might take back. The pay is whatever you salvage. A bolt of cloth to sell, a keg of ale to share, a rope to mend your boat. It's not steady, but it's enough to keep the fire lit, the children fed. By the 19th century, wrecking fades. Better ships and lighthouses mean fewer wrecks. Coast guards tighten their grip, and salvage becomes a job for companies, not villagers. By the 20th century, the wrecker's work is folklore, tangled in tales of lanterns and greed. But for centuries, they were the sea's scavengers, turning loss into life. Every piece of driftwood in a cottage wall, every spoon polished from a ship's cargo, was their work. The tide still whispers their story, even if the world moved on. Let's wander now into a world of ink and parchment, where the air is heavy with the scent of dust and old leather. It's the Middle Ages, perhaps the 12th or 13th century, in a monastery tucked into the hills of Italy or France. You're a scribe, and your job is to copy manuscripts, books, prayers, laws, stories by hand, word by word, line by line. In a time when printing presses don't exist, you are the keeper of knowledge, the one who ensures words outlive their speakers. Your work is sacred, but it's also grueling, a quiet labor that bends both body and mind. As a scribe, you sit at a slanted desk in a scriptorium, a cold room lit by flickering candles or a narrow window. Before you is a blank sheet of parchment, made from animal skin, scraped and stretched until it's smooth. Your tools are simple: a quill pen, a pot of ink, a knife to sharpen the quill, and a ruler to guide your lines. You dip the quill, tap off the excess ink, and begin to write, copying from an older manuscript propped beside you. Each letter is formed with care, each word a small act of devotion. A single page might take hours, a book months. Your fingers cramp, your eyes blur, but you keep going. A mistake means scraping the parchment clean and starting over. The work is silent, save for the scratch of quills and the occasional cough or rustle of pages. Monks often fill the scriptorium, but lay scribes, men and sometimes women, work too, hired by nobles or churches. You copy everything: Bible verses, legal charters, medical texts, even tales of knights and dragons. Some manuscripts are plain, meant for study. Others are illuminated, adorned with gold leaf and tiny paintings of saints or beasts. If you're skilled, you might add these decorations, your brush trembling as you paint a wing or a halo. If you're not, you stick to the words, knowing they're enough. Your life is ruled by light and season. In winter, the scriptorium is freezing, your breath visible as you work. In summer, you race to finish before the light fades. You learn to tilt the parchment to catch the sun, to mix ink that doesn't smudge, to spot flaws in the vellum before you waste a day's labor. Mistakes haunt you. A skipped word, a misspelled name, a blot of ink that ruins a page. Some scribes leave notes in the margins, grumbling about sore backs or bad weather. Others pray, their quills an offering to God. You do both, depending on the day. The job isn't safe in the way we think. Ink fumes sting your lungs, and candlelight strains your eyes until the world grows dim. Your back curves from years of hunching, your hands twist with pain. Parchment dust irritates your skin, and a careless spark can burn a month's work to ash. The pay is modest: food, shelter, maybe a coin for lay scribes. But there's pride in it. A book you copy might last centuries, read by people you'll never know. You're a bridge between minds, even if your name is forgotten. By the 15th century, scribes begin to fade. The printing press, with its movable type, churns out books faster and cheaper than any quill. Monasteries empty, scriptoriums go quiet. By the 16th century, the scribe's work is a relic, preserved in libraries but no longer a trade. Yet every ancient manuscript, every illuminated page, is their legacy. They gave us Plato, Augustine, Beowulf, their hands trembling as they wrote. Each word on parchment is a whisper of their patience, their care, their long, silent days. Now, let's shift to a louder, dirtier trade, one that smells of sweat and sawdust. It's the 17th century, in a growing town in England or colonial America, where new buildings rise from muddy fields. You're a sawyer, and your job is to cut timber into planks for houses, ships, and barns. Before machines, this is done by hand, with a two-man saw and a pit dug into the earth. You're one half of the team, either above the log or below it, pulling the saw through wood until your arms burn. It's brutal, essential work, and the town's growth rests on your shoulders. Sawyers work in pairs, one man in the pit, the other on top. If you're the pitman, you stand in a hole, sawdust raining into your eyes and mouth. If you're the topman, you balance on the log, guiding the saw's path. The blade is long, toothed, and unforgiving, cutting on the pull stroke. You and your partner move in rhythm. Pull, release, like a heartbeat that never stops. A good team can cut a dozen planks in a day, each one straight and true. A bad team wastes wood, time, and tempers. You learn to trust your partner, to match their strength, to know when they're tiring before they say it. The work is dangerous. The saw can slip, slicing hands or legs. Logs can roll, crushing bones. In the pit, you're half blind from sawdust, choking on it with every breath. Falls happen, especially when the ground is wet. You work in all weather. Rain turns the pit to mud. Heat makes the air thick. Winter numbs your fingers until the saw feels like ice. The pay is better than some trades. Wood is always needed, but it's not enough to make you rich. You barter planks for food, cloth, or a doctor's visit when the cuts get infected. Sawyers are men, often young and strong, though older hands stay in the trade if they're skilled. You learn the wood's secrets: how oak resists, how pine splits, how to spot knots that dull the blade. You learn the town's rhythm too, when a ship needs timber, when a barn goes up, when a storm leaves trees to salvage. The townsfolk know you by the saw's song, a steady rasp that carries across fields. They don't invite you to supper, but they nod when you pass, knowing their roofs depend on you. By the 19th century, sawyers decline. Steam-powered sawmills cut wood faster, with blades that don't tire. Factories churn out planks for cities growing too big for handwork. By the 20th century, the pit and saw are gone, replaced by machines and lumberyards. But every wooden beam in an old house, every ship that sailed, was born from the sawyer's sweat. Their rhythm built the world, one pull at a time, and the creak of a floorboard still hums with their forgotten song. Let's drift now into a world of whispers and shadows, where the air is thick with secrets and the flicker of candlelight. It's the 16th or 17th century in a European court, perhaps in Vienna or London, where power hums behind closed doors. You're a court jester, and your job is to make the powerful laugh, to dance on the edge of truth and danger with a fool's cap and a sharp tongue. You're no mere clown. You're a mirror held up to kings and queens, a voice that speaks what others dare not. Your bells jingle, but your work is no game. One wrong word, and the laughter stops. As a jester, you perform in grand halls or private chambers, your costume a patchwork of bright colors, your face sometimes painted, always masked by a grin. You juggle, sing, tell riddles, or spin tales that skirt the line between jest and jab. The court watches, nobles, advisors, the monarch, waiting for your next line. You might mock a pompous lord, tease a rival's ambition, or hint at a scandal nobody names. The king laughs and you're safe. The queen frowns and you're not. Your job is to entertain, but also to speak truth, wrapped in enough wit to keep your head on your shoulders. Your day is unpredictable. One moment, you're tumbling for a banquet. The next, you're whispering in the king's ear, offering a sly observation nobody else dares voice. You're part servant, part confidant, part spy. You hear everything. Gossip in the corridors, plans muttered over wine. You learn to listen without looking like you do, to remember without writing it down. Some jesters are kept close, trusted more than counselors. Others are dismissed as fools, underestimated until they strike with a quip that cuts deep. You walk a tightrope and the fall is never far. Jesters are often men, but women take the role too, especially in smaller courts. Many are outsiders, dwarfs, hunchbacks, or those marked by some quirk that makes them fit for foolery. You might have been a scholar, a poet, or a peasant with a quick wit, plucked from obscurity for your talent. The pay is good coin, clothes, a place at the table, but it's not steady. A new ruler might send you packing, or a single misstep could land you in a dungeon. You learn to read the room, to know when to push and when to pull back. You learn to laugh at yourself because if you don't, someone else will. The dangers are subtle but real. A jealous noble might take your jest personally, plotting against you in the shadows. A king's mood might shift, turning your wit into treason. You're rarely armed, rarely protected. Your only shield is your tongue, and it's as likely to wound you as save you. Loneliness creeps in too. You're surrounded by people, but you're never one of them. The court loves your jokes, not you. When the candles burn low, you're alone with your bells and your thoughts. By the 18th century, jesters fade. Enlightenment ideals favor reason over whimsy, and courts grow formal, less tolerant of fools. Professional actors and playwrights take over, turning jest into scripted plays. By the 19th century, the jester's cap is a relic, their role a footnote in royal histories. But for centuries, they were the spark in the court's fire, the ones who made power laugh at itself. Every sharp quip in a quiet hall, every truth spoken in jest, carries their echo. Their bells still jingle in the stories we tell, even if the courts forgot their names. Now, let's shift to a humbler, earthier trade, one rooted in the rhythm of the harvest. It's the 1700s in a rural village in Ireland or Poland, where fields ripple under the wind and the sun sets slow. You're a reaper, a seasonal worker who cuts grain with a sickle or scythe. Your job is to bring in the harvest, to turn swaying stalks into sheaves that feed the village through winter. It's back-breaking, sun-scorched work, but it's the pulse of the land, and without you, the bread stays in the ground. As a reaper, you rise at dawn, your sickle sharp and your hands wrapped in cloth to fend off blisters. You join a line of workers, men, women, children, moving through the field in a slow, steady wave. The wheat or barley stands tall, golden under the sun, and you swing your blade low, cutting close to the ground. Each stroke is a rhythm, each bundle a victory. You tie the cut stalks into sheaves, stacking them to dry before they're carted to the barn. A good reaper can clear an acre in a day, but the hours are long, the heat relentless. Sweat stings your eyes, and the dust coats your throat. The work is communal, almost festive at times. You sing as you cut, old songs about harvests and heroes, your voice blending with the others. At midday, you rest under a tree, sharing bread and weak ale with the crew. The farmer watches, counting sheaves, judging your speed. You're paid by the day or the acre, enough for a meal or a new shirt, but never enough to save. Some reapers travel, following the harvest from village to village, sleeping in barns or under hedges. Others stay local, their hands knowing every field within a day's walk. The dangers are quiet but constant. A dull sickle can slip, gashing your leg. The sun can burn you red, or worse, send you dizzy with heat stroke. Thorns and stones hide in the grain, cutting hands or twisting ankles. Exhaustion is the real enemy. Push too hard, and you collapse. Lag behind, and you're not hired tomorrow. You learn to pace yourself, to sharpen your blade at dusk, to spot the clouds that promise rain and ruin. You learn the land's moods, its soft patches and stubborn roots. Reapers are anyone who can swing a blade, young, old, male, female. Families work together, children gathering stray stalks, elders tying sheaves with practiced hands. You're poor, often landless, relying on the harvest to carry you through lean months. The village knows you by your bent back, your quick hands, your voice rising in song. They don't praise you, but they share their ale, knowing winter depends on your work. By the 19th century, reapers start to vanish. Mechanical reapers, then combine harvesters, cut fields faster than any human. Farms grow larger, needing fewer hands. By the 20th century, the sickle is a museum piece, the reaper's song a memory. But for centuries, they were the ones who fed the world, who turned summer's gold into winter's bread. Every loaf on a table, every barn stacked with grain, was their labor. The fields still sway with their rhythm, even if the world forgot their names. Let's drift now to a world of clinking coins and creaking carts, where the roads are dusty and the markets hum with life. It's the 15th century, in a bustling town in Flanders or Italy, where trade is the pulse of the day. You're a peddler, a wandering merchant, and your job is to carry goods from village to village, selling needles, ribbons, pots, or whatever fits in your pack. You're a lifeline for those too far from city markets, a bringer of small luxuries and necessities alike. Your feet ache, your voice is hoarse, but your trade keeps the world spinning, one sail at a time. As a peddler, you travel light, your wares slung over your shoulder or piled on a donkey if you're lucky. Your pack is a treasure chest, bolts of cloth, tin spoons, glass beads, herbs for healing or cooking. You walk miles each day, following rutted paths through forests and fields, your eyes on the next village. When you arrive, you set up in the square or go door to door, calling out your goods in a sing-song voice. Housewives haggle, children trail you, and dogs bark at your heels. You smile, joke, tell stories of far-off places. Each sale is a victory, each coin a step towards supper. The work is unpredictable. A good day brings a pocket full of pennies and a warm barn to sleep in. A bad day means rain-soaked goods, empty hands, and a night under a hedge. You barter as often as you sell, cloth for eggs, a knife for a loaf. You learn to read people, the farmer who'll trade but not pay, the widow who'll buy if you listen to her tale. You know the seasons, too. Ribbons sell at harvest festivals, wool at winter's edge. You learn every shortcut, every inn where the ale is cheap, every bridge where bandits wait. Peddlers are men and women, young and old, often those with no land or trade to tie them down. You might be a runaway apprentice, a widow, or a dreamer who loves the road. The pay is whatever you make, minus the tolls and taxes lords demand at every turn. You carry a stick for dogs and thieves, a charm for luck, and a tale for every customer. You're a storyteller as much as a seller, weaving tales of silk from Cathay or Saint's Bones in your pack. Half the time, the story sells the goods. The dangers are many, roads are lonely, and robbers don't ask questions. Weather turns paths to mud or ice, ruining your wares or your health. A bad deal can spark a fight. A false coin can land you in stocks. You're an outsider everywhere, eyed with suspicion by villagers who think you're a cheat or worse. You learn to move on, to keep your pack light and your wits sharp. The road is your home, but it's a hard one, and not every peddler sees old age. By the 19th century, peddlers fade. Railroads and shops bring goods closer, and mail-order catalogs steal your customers. By the 20th century, the peddler's cry is a memory, their pack a museum piece. But for centuries, they were the thread that stitched villages to the wider world, carrying buttons and dreams across the miles. Every ribbon in a girl's hair, every pot on a hearth, was their work. The roads still hum with their steps, even if the world forgot their voices. Now, let's end with a stranger, heavier trade, one that lingers at the edge of life and death. It's the 1700s, in a village in England or Hungary, where superstition clings like mist. You're a corpse watcher, hired to sit by the dead before burial, ensuring they don't rise or their soul doesn't wander. Families pay you to keep vigil, to guard against spirits or worse. You sit in the dark, a candle your only company, watching a body that's silent but never still. It's lonely, eerie work, but it's yours, and the village needs you to face what they cannot. As a corpse watcher, you come to the house at dusk, when the body is laid out, washed, and wrapped in a shroud. You sit by the bed or coffin, a stool your throne, a prayer book or knitting in your hands. The family leaves you alone, too grieving or afraid to stay. Your job is to watch for signs, twitches, breaths, anything that might mean the dead aren't truly gone. Some believe in vampires, others in restless souls. You don't know what you believe, but you watch, hour after hour, the candle's flame dancing on the walls. If nothing happens, you're paid. If something does, you call the priest. The work is quiet but heavy. The house creaks, the wind whispers, and every shadow feels alive. You learn to steady your nerves, to hum softly to fill the silence, to ignore the chill that creeps up your spine. You know the dead don't move, not really, but stories linger. Tales of eyes opening, hands twitching, voices in the dark. You carry salt or iron for protection, a cross around your neck. The pay is small, a coin, a meal, but it's steady. Death comes often, and so do the vigils. Corpse watchers are usually women, often older, widows or spinsters who know loss well. You're chosen for your calm, your courage, or your poverty. The village respects you, but they don't sit with you. You're part of death's ritual, necessary but apart. You learn the family's grief, the way a mother's shroud is tucked tighter than a stranger's. You learn the smell of death, the weight of silence, the way a candle burns faster in a room with no breath. By the 19th century, corpse watching fades. Science dispels old fears, and undertakers take over death's rituals. By the 20th century, the watcher's stool is empty, their role a footnote in folklore. But for centuries, they were the ones who faced the dark, who sat with the dead so the living could sleep. Every peaceful burial, every soul laid to rest, was their work. The night still holds their vigil, even if the world forgot their eyes. And so we close our journey through these forgotten jobs, these lives that shaped the past but left no monuments. Knocker-ups, leech collectors, fullers, sin-eaters, link boys, dowsers, sweeps, mourners, nailers, chantlers, drovers, wreckers, scribes, sawyers, jesters, reapers, splitters, beetles, peddlers, watchers. They were the hands that built, warmed, fed, and mourned the world. Their tools are rusted, their songs faded, but their work lives in the walls we touch, the roads we walk, the stories we tell. As you drift to sleep, let their quiet strength carry you, a reminder that even the smallest lives leave echoes. Good night.